You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hello, mama friends. Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Mama Work It podcast. So glad you're here with us. My name is Marissa Lonick, and I'm the founder of Mama Work It, where we support women in the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. And I am so excited to introduce you to our phenomenal guest this week, Dr. Caroline Buzanko. Dr. Caroline is a registered psychologist with nearly 3 decades of clinical experience supporting children, teens, and their families. With an unwavering passion for empowering families, Dr. Caroline weaves her expertise into a tapestry of understanding, strength, and engagement. She collaborates closely with families to unlock the potential of every child, foster strong connections, ignite confidence and courage, and fortify emotional resilience. And specifically today, Dr. Caroline is going to dive deep into a topic that I know I've experienced. And from talking to my personal mom friends, I think many of us out there actually might be experiencing this. And that is anxiety, and in particular, social anxiety. So, Dr. Caroline, thank you so much for being here. I cannot wait to learn from you and just to dive deeper into this topic today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's definitely an important topic for so many of us.
Yes, agreed. So first off, would love to just learn more about you and your journey as both a professional and a parent.
Yeah, it's interesting because I always knew I wanted to be a parent, didn't always know I'd want to be a psychologist. So how it all came to be wasn't the route that I actually expected. It was challenging being a mom. So that was my focus really throughout my whole 20s. Couldn't get pregnant, so decided, late 20s, early 30s to go for my master's. And so, of course, got pregnant as I'm doing my master's. And then decided to go get my PhD and was pregnant with my second kiddo. So it was busy times, doing that. And I had already started my private practice once I had finished my master's. So juggling all of those pieces was a challenge. So the vision I had for what parenting was going to look like and what my professional work was going to look like ended up being very different. I think, we can never really be prepared anyways. They always say that with our birthing plans, you prepare. I don't know about you, but in my prenatal class, we prepared everything and then we threw up our plans into the air because, nothing is probably going to go the way we expect it to. That's sort of how everything happened. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I definitely resonate with that. I had a plan. And my first kids were twins. And if you're listening, you probably know many twins decide to show up early to the party. Mine did. So yeah, that plan for sure was not exactly executed as imagined, for sure. Yeah. So let's dive into our topic today, which is anxiety, really social anxiety. So for those who may not have heard of this term before, can you define it for us? Maybe give us some signs of social anxiety so we can recognize if that's something that resonates with what we're experiencing.
Yeah, for it to be a disorder, it's this intense fear of being judged, right? We're being scrutinized by other people. We're scared of being embarrassed or humiliated in front of other people. But I'm going to say, though, it doesn't have to be a disorder. And social anxiety is actually the number one anxiety most of us feel. As a human species, it makes sense that we're socially anxious because if we think back in caveman days, if we didn't have our tribe, we would get eaten, right? We would die to the elements. We wouldn't be very successful living on our own, let's say. So being a part of our tribe is so important. So it makes sense that so many of us have the social anxiety. It becomes a problem, though, when it starts impeding our day-to-day function. So it's really, though, that worried about being judged. Now, it could be in a performance situation, for kiddos writing a test, doing a presentation in front of their class. As adults, it could be presenting at a board meeting or doing any kind of presentations. But it could also be in everyday situations, initiating a conversation with someone, going to a social gathering, even with friends and family, people that you're close to. So it can manifest in lots of different ways. When it shows up, there is, we might have stories that I'm not good enough, I'm not competent, people are going to laugh at me. People are going to judge my outfit, what I look like, right? So we're just worried about what people are going to think about us, how we're going to be judged. And so we might have anticipatory anxiety that it could be weeks, thinking about this event, and we're building it up, all of this anxiety and worries in our head before the event ever comes. So we've got kind of those stories. Emotionally, physiologically, of course, like with any anxiety, we might go into fight flight. So elevated heart rate, right? Sweaty hands. I know a lot of women who will turn red, whenever they are worried about going into a situation, and you can just see from their chest all the way up into their face, they're going red. Stomach aches, headaches for our kiddos, they usually don't have the same awareness as we might about what it is that they're nervous about. So they might just think that it's a physiological symptom. I'm too sick to go to school today. I've got a headache. I should stay home from school today. And we might experience those things for sure as adults. We just might have a little bit more awareness of what's going on. Behavioral pieces then we're avoiding, right? So we might call into sick to go to work. We're going to say, sorry, I'm going to miss out on this social event. So we start seeing some of those avoidant behaviors or other safety behaviors. For my women who turn red, I actually have one who wears a scarf all year long because she wants to hide her neck, but just gets so red. So she's trying to hide that. Some adults might drink before they go out to a party, for example, sort of that social lubricant. So we start engaging in these behaviors to sort of make us feel better. So there's lots of different ways. For everyone, it's so different. I mean, it's funny, in this role, everyone thinks that I'm an extrovert. I can go up on stage and talk to 10,000 people. Of course, there's nerves. That's normal, but it's not anything crippling. I can easily go do it. I interpret that those nerves as a challenge, as energy for me to use when I go out on stage. But then when you put me in a one-on-one social situation, or, like a going over to dinner with a friends, I really am an introvert. And that's where my personal social anxiety comes out. And so people might not realize it and think like, how are you nervous with some of your closest friends? But it's just a very different situation. We've got different hats. So yeah, it can show up in lots of different ways.
Yeah. Thank you so much for exemplifying all that. And I love that you're telling us too, that with the younger people in our lives, our kids, that they may not have the capability to know that that's what it is. And it's good for us to be able to potentially recognize it for them in that sense.
Yeah. And especially if it comes out, sorry to interrupt, especially if it comes out behaviorally, because for a lot of kids, I mean, we've got two types of behaviors. One is our internalizers. Those are the ones who will withdraw, who'll be quiet, they'll run away. They're just sort of struggling silently inside. Then we've got our externalizers. They're making everybody else struggle. They're putting everybody else into distress because they're screaming and they're crying and they're tantruming and whining or negotiating, really irritable. So oftentimes anxiety comes out behaviorally. Even anger, I don't know if you've ever stubbed your toe or hit your head on something. Our first
Never.
reaction is usually shoot, right? We get angry. We might swear. That's the pain part of our brain being triggered. And the pain part of our brain actually releases anger. And I think that's really important, especially for our kiddos who act out, for parents to understand that it's probably they're protecting themselves somehow. I don't believe in bad kids. There's no such thing as oppositional defiant kids. I'm sure parents who've got those kids might disagree and argue me on that one, but they're protecting themselves for something. And I think that those kids really need to be understood, because oftentimes it's this underlying anxiety and fear of being rejected or not loved or being good enough, whatever else is going on for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to ask a follow-up question to all of this because I feel like it makes sense that anxiety would manifest before the actual event or before the thing that is making us feel anxious. But what about the aftermath? Does it show up afterwards too, with like maybe reliving the situation or maybe questioning something we said or didn't say or anything like that?
Yeah, it absolutely could. And that's where we start, where that anxiety can start turning into depression, right? When we're starting to ruminate after, I should have said this, I should have said that. It's usually, though, when we're going to see this person again, or we're going to go back into that situation. So it's still looking for next time, right? So usually anxiety really is more future oriented, but that's not to say that we won't beat ourselves up. I should have, but it's probably because we're worried about now the repercussions of what's going to happen from that. So if you went to a job interview, for example, and you're like, oh, why did I say that? I should have said all of these things. It's because
Right.
we're still waiting for the outcome, the ball to drop, so to speak.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Makes sense. There's always a future step there that's triggering it. Makes sense. Okay.
Right.
What would you say are the traps that moms in particular fall into that can worsen anxiety?
Yeah. And so there's some traps for ourselves and some traps for our kiddos. Really, anything we do to make ourselves feel better or our kids feel better is a trap. We're actually maintaining anxiety. It's so counterintuitive. And I don't know if you watch
Wow.
Seinfeld at all. I
I
love
have,
you.
yes.
There's an episode opposite George where he decides to do everything against his intuition. So normally George would say, I'm a millionaire and have the penthouse suite on the top floor of this multi-million dollar. No, he's like, today I'm going to say the truth. And he tells the girl, I live in my parents' basement suite. I don't have a job, all of these things. And he ends up getting the girl, getting a job. I think it was for the Yankees. He ends up being successful, doing everything opposite to what he thought he should be doing. Parenting's kind of like that. Everything we think we should be doing is probably wrong, and we should just do the opposite. And that's definitely true with anxiety. And so, if we look at, I'll just focus on the kids for right now. A common one is, if I have a teenager who's in grade 12, and the first time our kids have a heartbreak, let's say, we would probably jump in. Don't worry, you're so young. There's a million other fish in the sea. This isn't your first, like, you're going to find your future partner, whatever. We're going to say all these things to make them feel better. We're actually robbing them of the opportunity to regulate their emotions, to process everything that's going on for them, to build resilience. And we do that from a very young age, right? If they lose a soccer game, oh, kiddo, you played so good, just the D was off their game, or the goalie just was off their game. We find reasons, right? We're always softening the blow. And every time we soften the blow, they're never learning how to manage and regulate disappointment and grief and loss and rejection, right? We need them to feel these big feels. And so that's the first thing today. It's just to be able to sit with them and not try to make them feel better. It sounds so counterintuitive, but what ends up happening is if we're always reassuring, no, kiddo, you look great. No, kiddo, you practice. You're going to do great. No, kiddo, don't worry. It's not a big deal. Hey, kiddo, there's no monsters under the bed. Here, I'll sprinkle monster dust, whatever it is that we do to make them feel better. First, we're minimizing how they feel. right? So we're not validating that. So kids are either going to go internal, they're going to withdraw, and they're just going to stop sharing because you're not going to believe them anyways, and you're always minimizing how they feel. Or they're going to lash out and show you how big of a deal this is, right? We see this at bedtime when kids are trying to go to bed, for example. They just stay up and it's a fight and a fight and a fight. So that's one piece. Depending on the age, if we're saying it's not a big deal, there's nothing to worry about, we could be confusing kids. Then why am I feeling these big feelings? I must be such a baby. And I've actually heard kiddos say that, right? I'm such a baby because everybody's telling me this isn't a big deal. And yet I feel these big feelings. Another piece is they're not able to learn how to regulate those emotions, but reassurance actually can turn into an OCD behavior. And I've seen this happen where kids, I have one, for example, who can't leave the house until her mother goes through this checklist of reassuring her that all of these things are absolutely okay. She will not go to school until these things are okay. It's the same thing as checking and rechecking doors, that they're locked or the lights are turned off or the appliances are unplugged. It starts turning into this compulsive behavior. And so, all of these things, I mean, I could keep going on, but that gives you a sample of why that can be really problematic. They need to learn how to regulate and to feel those feelings. I don't want the first time they're feeling rejection when they're fired from their job, in their 30s. They're going to fall way harder and faster than if they didn't have all of these sort of micro experiences through childhood and adolescence.
So instead, and I totally get that, because especially as a mom, your heart just aches. You want to be able to take the pain away. So instead of going with that gut reaction of doing that and comforting and soothing and minimizing the issue and minimizing the feeling, what is the recommended approach there?
Yeah, we want to be an emotion coach is what we want to do. So, I mean, in the heat of the moment, no talking is best. Moms talk too much. So I'm always saying my first piece of advice is cut out 95% of what you're about to say.
Yes.
Ideally, you don't even need to say anything, truly. I remember even just in my own, I don't have a lot of memories of my mother that wasn't annoying because a lot of it was annoying advice. But the one time that really resounds with me was the first time I broke up with one of my boyfriends who meant a lot to me, who's actually I'm married to now. So we ended up getting back together later on. But she didn't give her usual speech. The only thing she did was come and sit next to me on my bed and just sat there. She literally did not say anything. She just sat there. She didn't even put an arm around me. That space is really what kids need, and not sitting in front of them, right? Being trying to make eye contact with them, being sitting right across from them or standing right across from them, that can be confrontational. And if they're already emotional, their defenses are already up. So sitting next to them side by side can be really helpful, and just creating that space. If you feel like you need to say something, I would say just say an adjective. And this is true. It doesn't matter if it's anxiety or sadness or anger, frustration, their sibling is making them mad. An adjective. So, for example, that sucks. Sucks is the adjective, right? Or, wow, this is big. Big would be the adjective. You're just giving a descriptor word to show them that you understand. I know that everyone listening to this podcast listens to your kids, but your kids need to feel like you hear them and understand them. That's really the key, is that they feel heard and understood.
Mm-hmm.
So that's in the moment. Proactively, we want to model and talk about, we want to build emotional literacy. So throughout our day, we can say, oh man, I'm so frustrated. I burned the chicken. I was too focused over here and I burned the chicken. We're just going to throw everyday little, things that come up. We're going to use our emotions and say what we're going to do about it. And same thing with them. If they come home and they didn't make the basketball team, oh man, how disappointing. Right? So we can kind of just use some of that language. At dinner, have an emoji cards or an emotion wheel, right? Where you guys as a family can say, how are we feeling right now? Everybody go around the table. How are you feeling? Where are you feeling that feeling in your body? That's a huge piece that a lot of kids and even adults miss, is this interoceptive awareness, understanding what's happening in our body, because it actually gives us a lot of information, right? If we feel that tightness in our throat or a tightness in our stomach, that's telling us something important. We usually just push it away. And that's a trap that we fall into as adults, is we push it away and we drink a bottle of wine or we binge out on Netflix. We sort of numb ourselves out without actually being able to sit with it and process it. That's how we process it and become emotionally resilient. So it's really that proactive piece, building, talking about how we're feeling and what we're going to do and how we're going to manage it. But then in the moment, just really giving them space. And we want to show confidence, right? So if they're really worried about a presentation that they're going to do tomorrow, let's say, oh man, I can see this is a big deal for you, right? The big deal is the adjective. So what are you going to do? What's your plan? We're showing confidence. We have what's called mirror neurons, and it's a very simple example is if you yawn, right? If you yawn, somebody close to you might yawn as well, right? It becomes sort of contagious. Think about when we teach our kiddos to walk. We're usually wide-eyed, we're smiling, we're clapping, our body language is open. Yeah, kiddo, come on, keep coming to mama, you're almost there, right? We have all of these indicators that shows them confidence and encouragement. And that's the same sort of thing that we want to do. Wide eyes, I mean, that's just something simple that we could do if we forget everything else. And then, what's your plan, kiddo? What are you going to do? What do you need help with? What's the first step? We're asking them questions. We're showing our confidence in their capacity to handle the situation. Because anxiety is essentially the belief, I can't handle it. It being whatever the situation is, the presentation, talking with friends, initiating a conversation, whatever it is. So we want to show them, I believe that you can handle it. We're not going to necessarily say those words because they might just say, I can't, and it might end up a fight. But we're going to show them through our actions and through our questioning.
Yeah. So much good stuff there. I have so many things I could comment on. First of all, I love that you said, and this is so simple, and I remember when my kids were babies, the pediatrician and all the books would say, talk to your baby, explain everything you're doing throughout the day, just to give them verbal introduction, right? A language introduction. I feel like this is similar in the sense of like letting your child know, even though they're older now, but just kind of out loud processing what you're feeling rather than internalizing it. So that's
Absolutely.
where that kind of came. That's what came up for me when you said that, is like, oh, we've done this before, guys. We've done this in a different capacity.
Yeah. And even, at 18 months, when my firstborn was 18 months, she knew she could say, how an 18-month-old, it was something like I'm frustrated. And that was language I was always using. Oh, I'm frustrated. And I would go get a bottle of water and I would do a little walk. That's what I was modeling for her. She would do it. She'd go to the pantry. I had those little tiny bottles of water that she would pick up, and she'd grab her own and walk around the island, shaking her bottle of water. So even, 18 months, we want to be modeling this language. If you do have listeners with younger kiddos, it's never too late. And if you've got older kiddos, it's still not too late. We can continue doing this. It's quite important.
Yeah, agree. I think modeling is it's a thing we often forget. We think we have to be so like laser focused and zoomed in on the actual teaching and parenting part. But meanwhile, it's just the way we're behaving in our day to day that's probably having the biggest impact on our kids, because
Absolutely.
They're emulating, they're imitating, they're learning kind of passively in that way. So if you are a mom listening and you do suffer from anxiety in some way, shape, or form, maybe it's social, maybe it comes up in other ways. You mentioned lots of examples it can manifest. obviously, you want to be able to model the right behavior. What exactly is that right behavior for yourself, not just for your kids in situations like that?
For yourself and for your kids, it's important to recognize. So I'm not telling parents to always be brave and always, I mean, I think kids always already think that we are because we aren't modeling. That
Mhm.
for me, I was always good with my firstborn. My secondborn, I realized I wasn't doing it so much because one day she came with me to one of my presentations and there was a few hundred. I was in an auditorium and there was a few hundred people already there starting to mill in. And she's just looking at me and she's like, Mom, why are you never scared? I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, because you're not scared. Look at all these people. I would be peeing my pants. I'd be so scared. I'm like, kiddo, I totally am nervous. I'm totally a little bit scared. That's normal. And I realized I haven't been modeling this for her. But it's important for our own selves too, to be able to talk out loud. I'm really upset right now. I'm really nervous. I'm supposed to go to the comedy club on Saturday and there's going to be people there that I don't know. That's important for our own awareness so that we're not
Mhm.
just because we usually don't say anything. We're pushing it down, pushing it down. Then we become pressure cookers and then we freak out at our kids or at our husband or whatever is going on. We get so stressed. So being able to say it out loud, I think it was Mr. Rogers who said something like, if it's mentionable, it's manageable. Just by putting the
Mhm.
words out there, we now can take a little bit more of our power back, right? And so we talking through that is just as good for our kids as it is for ourselves. I love naming it, right? Oh, Yelly McYellerson is coming out now, right? If we start yelling at our kids, or Scaredy Cat Sam is coming out right now. Okay, Sam, thank you for telling me that I'm nervous going out with friends. That makes sense. This is what I'm going to do, right? And so being able to now say my next steps. Um, Everyone's got to figure out what's good for them. A paradox is good for some people. So if you suffer from insomnia, an example of paradox would be, okay, insomnia, Ivana, keep me up all night. I dare you to keep me up until 3 o'clock tonight, right? We're demanding more from our anxiety, for example. Maybe it's making fun of it. Oh, everybody's gonna hate my outfit. Everyone's gonna hate it so much they're gonna bring me up on stage to the comedy club and they're just gonna point at me. Everyone in the club is gonna point at, like, maybe we're just exaggerating it, making fun of it, or it's just saying, okay, whatever, like an annoying little brother or something like that. I have an annoying little brother, so that's why I say that even now as an adult, right? Okay, annoying little brother, whatever. I'm going to ignore you and I'm going to wear my best outfit and I'm going to do my hair all fancy and this is what I'm going to do. Even though I'm scared, I'm still going to do it anyway, right? So this is more important than being scared and staying home and watching Netflix or whatever that is. So it's really being able to say it out loud and problem solve through those steps and what you're going to do for yourself and for your kids.
Mhm. Awesome. Thanks for all those ideas. I like how they're all really different. And I feel like for some people, one way will work really well. And for others, maybe another way will work well because one way is going to be triggering or not or whatever. So I love that. There's like a whole spectrum of ways to approach this. So
There really is. Yeah.
yeah. Well, good. We're going to move on now to our lightning round where we're just
Okay.
going to ask you some random fun questions just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. What is one app you cannot live without?
I'm not a app girl, to be completely honest, but I do like Fitbit specifically to track my periods. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it tells me when, like, it's predicted to start in whatever days. That's about it. Yeah. I
Nothing
don't use
wrong
any
with
other
that. We
apps.
recently did an episode on cyclical living, and that was
Mm,
recommended to be tracking your cycles. So,
it's very
yes.
important. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. What's your go to get it done song?
Pump Up the Jam from
Oh,
Technotronic. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Oldie
Yeah.
but goodie. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. What book are you reading right now?
Dopamine Nation. I can't remember who the author is. Oh, I happen to have it right here, actually. It is fantastic. Anna Lemke. It's a very good book.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I recommend it. Mhm.
What if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life? What would it be? Calories don't count.
Honestly, it'd be blueberries. If I could have two, blueberries and peanut butter. I live off of that daily. I just literally dump the thing of blueberries into the peanut butter. It's my favorite.
Together. You eat it together. All
Yeah, with
right.
a spoon, I will dump the blueberries into the jar and just eat it like that. I usually go through a jar of peanut butter probably every 2 days.
Wow.
It's kind of disgusting, but that would be, yeah.
No.
I love it.
I never heard of blueberries and peanut butter. I'm going to give that a try. That
Mhm.
sounds actually really delicious and healthy.
Mhm.
So I'm
And you can
down.
wrap them up in cabbage, like green cabbage. You can do that or put it on celery. It's very good.
Huh.
Hmm.
Learning so many new recipes here on this episode. Bonus. All right. Finally, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Teleportation that also controls time. Did you ever watch Heroes?
No.
Okay, one of the characters named Hero, actually, he could stop time and teleport through time and space. So
Wow.
I would probably stop time, do a day's worth of work, and then still do more work and have time for family.
Love it. All right. Well, before we officially wrap up, please tell our listeners where they can find you.
The best place, I do have a website, drcarolinebuzanko.com. Otherwise, LinkedIn, Facebook, I do have pages, Instagram. I have some pages there that you can check me out, drcarolinebuzanko.com, or
Perfect.
my name on those social medias. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we will link that in today's show notes so you can easily find Dr. Caroline. Thank you so much for being here. Learned a ton. Really appreciate your expertise and your wisdom and your time.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.